It's Pat and Stu for Glenn on the Glenn Beck program. Threw out his back or something over the weekend, so hopefully he'll be back tomorrow. The second week of the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin kicked off this morning with arguments over the stunning news Friday of the $27 million settlement for George Floyd's family over his death. They're going to apparently recall 7 of the jurors, I guess, and talk to them about how they feel about that settlement. Because doesn't the settlement sort of admit wrongdoing on the part of the city?
Kind of does, right?
Seems like it.
You're paying $27 million for what?
Yeah.
If you know, Chauvin is turned to be innocent somehow, what did you pay for?
Right.
And I think the answer, of course, is clear, which is they paid for their city not to burn down. Now, I don't know. I mean, I think, look, by my eye, not being a criminal justice expert, by my eye, what happened there was absolutely not lawful. That being said, if it wouldn't, like, why would you settle and have the settlement come out publicly
before the trial
when you're selecting jurors?
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense to me at all. Certainly, it's not giving Derek Chauvin his. It's not helping him maintain his constitutionally guaranteed rights of innocence until proven guilty.
Right. So he's charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. And the judge allowed prosecutors to reinstate third-degree murder charge last week. So it will be interesting to see. I mean, what is going to happen if he is found innocent? Does that enter into the jury's decision at all? It would seem like these are people. It would be hard not to, wouldn't it, to consider what's going to happen if you find this guy not guilty?
Well, it would just be a strange idea to pay someone $27 million for nothing, right? If you believe there is no wrongdoing, you don't pay $27 million typically.
Yeah, typically.
And if you're going to pay $27 million, you don't do it while they're selecting jurors. Usually
be a tough situation.
Remember the OJ thing back in the day? They had the trial, where if it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Yep.
And OJ gets off. And then afterward, they had the civil trial, right, where you were going to find out how much money OJ was going to pay for this crime he had already been acquitted of, right? And it seems like the rational order of events. Like, to pay out a settlement before you have the verdict seems completely nuts to me. I mean, you have to be able to. I mean, they're in the middle of selecting jurors. Again, I think
you can't do this without prejudicing the jury. I don't think.
I don't think so either.
I don't see how anyway.
And I don't know. Maybe they're just not coordinated at all. But you'd think that this would be the type of thing that would be obvious. This is not the time to settle. Again, you could pay afterward. You might say, well, look, it was still wrongful even though he got off. Like that, maybe that makes sense. I don't know. Again, he hasn't. He isn't going to get off. I mean, he's going to be convicted of this, I think. I mean, Minnesota is like, they're going to figure out a way here. Because if he is not convicted, now this is not constitutional. This is not the way justice works. But you're telling me there's not somebody in Minneapolis going, guys, if this dude is not convicted, we are going to have a pile of rubble for a city. That is exactly what they're all thinking there. They know it. They believe it. When it just happened, before there was any trial and there was any chance to hold someone responsible, the city was burned to the ground. Now, if this guy just walks out of there,
can you imagine?
You will be able to, it will be nighttime and you will look in the distance from hundreds of miles away and see a glow. And probably a lot closer to that, because probably a lot of other cities will have the same thing happen. And that's what happened last time. I mean, look, it's just reality. And I think, there's a thing that the NFL does a lot that I've noticed, where there's a controversial big ticket like news item, and the NFL will come out with this like very long, aggressive suspension. 14 games. And then they appeal it, and it goes down to like 4. And I swear the NFL is just saying, like, let's just come out. We'll act like, we'll come out really tough on this stuff. Really long suspension. If it under appeal, it gets cut in half, then it gets cut in half. Fine. But if we come out with a too low of a penalty, we'll look like we're not controlling this issue and don't care about, someone cheating or whatever. And I would say it's, Patriots, because, it's always the Patriots. But if, it's usually a Patriot-related issue. But then they're just like, okay, well, so now it went from 14 games to 3. But we tried our best. And look, it got overturned in appeal. What are we going to do? And I think there is a temptation by a lot of these municipal governments to say, look, charge him with everything. Like, who cares? Make it the hard. It's one person. Again, this is not the right instinct. It's against everything that our country stands for. But there is an argument, I think, that these people have, and they say, look, just charge him. At least we're coming out hard. And if he gets off, he gets off. We can't control that. But go after him.
Yeah, well, and they are. Second-degree murder, manslaughter charges, so that must mean more than one. And now they've reinstated a third-degree murder charge.
Right.
So they're just throwing everything at him to see what sticks. And they're hoping something will stick.
Yeah. They want first-degree murder. It's like, I don't think you can argue
that he planned it.
Pre-planned it. Probably not.
Probably not.
Who knows the way that a lot of these jurisdictions have different quirks about how these things get applied. I don't know what the right degree of murder would be, but he's probably going to get convicted of one of the degrees.
And look, I don't know a single person who thought, I think the police officer acted completely properly there. I certainly didn't think that when this happened. It looked like he was definitely guilty of wrongdoing. I mean, there's no reason for you to have your knee on his neck for 8 minutes, right? I mean, I don't think any of us thought that was appropriate. But the coroner's report afterwards that said that he had a fatal dose of fentanyl in his system. And then you realize, I mean, certainly that's going to come out in the trial. And so would he have died anyway? I don't know. I mean, we'll never know that. But I think the jury will consider that once the evidence is presented. I think the coroner's report will probably play a big part in this. But I don't think that you can exonerate Derek Chauvin of his responsibility in this.
Right. It's tough to tell, right? Like, even if, and that does seem to be the case, that there were drugs in the system and they could have, but that it's tough because it's like, did the interaction push this over the edge? Was it just such a stressful event that it pushed it over the edge, even though it didn't, like crush his windpipe or something, it's going to be difficult, and medical experts will go back and forth on that, I'm sure, on the stands during the trial. And look, the uncomfortable truth of the wonderful system we all praise here in America, this idea of innocence until proven guilty. The uncomfortable truth of that is all of this matters. Even if you think what he did was wrong, even if George Floyd, you might think is a complete saint and the greatest guy of all time. I mean, it doesn't matter. None of that matters if the medical situation comes out in a way that he might be, he still got fired, right? He's still going to have repercussions. He will likely be convicted of murder, but it's possible that he would be convicted of a lesser charge. And if that happens, still cities will be burned to the ground over it. And, people love this idea that, you're innocent until proven guilty when it's someone they like who is benefiting from that. And when it's someone who they don't like that is benefiting from it, they all hate this idea. And while that is squarely part of our system, a person that we don't like who's innocent does not get thrown in prison. That's not the way it's supposed to work. What is not part of our system is to sit here and glorify people who burn down cities because of the result. That is the type of thing that happens all the time in the media, but is not excusable. It's not excusable to tear down a statue because you don't like what the guy said 300 years ago. It's not excusable to go burn down a city because you don't like the result of a trial. It's not excusable to create all sorts of violence and to kill people, because dozens of people died in the summer in those riots. That was not just a property damage situation. Dozens of people died. And I would also add on to it, it's also not acceptable, even if you think that you really don't like the results of an election, to go to the Capitol and overwhelm it. Not okay. But that's the only thing our media seems to understand occurred in the last year. It's not the only event. There is a lot of other things that, by the way, by scope, were much, much worse. Much, much worse. Yes, the symbolism of the Capitol thing was incredibly notable, and there was all sorts of problems, and I won't defend it for a second. But the tearing up of many of our major cities and causing hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of damage, disrupting economies, destroying lifelong family businesses of minorities throughout these cities, it cannot be overstated how bad that is.
Who was it? Was it Dick Durbin that said something like, you can't compare the summer riots to the January 6th riot insurrection because it was a huge disservice to the police officers who died? Yeah, the ones who died over the summer in the riots, those, because there were several who died during that time period. Whereas, yes, an officer died, but it wasn't apparently at the hands of the mob on January 6th. So, I mean, they've taken this and twisted it so badly that it looks like January 6th was the worst thing that ever happened, and that the summer of rioting was just fine.
Yeah, I mean, they take every death associated. Now, even when you have a completely peaceful rally, many times there's people who have medical events, and they die. Every medical event associated with that, they are counting to the Capitol Hill death toll. And you're right, like some of these deaths, look, it was violence, and I feel at some level it's just pointless to try to say anything here, because it's going to be taken as this defense of the Capitol thing, which
it is
not doing. I think it was really bad. I called it in the moment a national disgrace. But like 19 people at least died during the George Floyd riots and those associated with. That's a huge number. And we saw people beat to a pulp by crowds on video over and over and over again in city after city. Thankfully, some of them survived, so the number's not even higher. None of this is excusable on either side, but it's amazing to see, and you see it too with the George Floyd thing. Now we're back to saying cops are bad again. Like when the Capitol Hill thing was going on, the police were good, and we couldn't believe how disrespectful those people were. They were beating them over the head with Blue Lives Matter flags over and over again. At the same time, we would go back and forth with the left all the time. AOC was saying, like, the Capitol Hill police came to my office, and I wasn't sure if they were going to hurt me or not. Right? That was the way they were talking about it until we got to the impeachment hearing. And then everyone respected the police more than anything in the world for 2 weeks. And now, again, they're all evil again, and they're just beating up minorities for no reason. Yeah. Can you at least pick a lane? Not even a lane, a direction on the highway.
Be nice.
It would be really, it would be nice.
But no, because the media allows them to have it both ways every single time.